live dance, doing the live dance. And we're live. Hello, everybody. I am HP Holo / Edie Skye, and he is Jacob Holo, and together we are Jacob and HP Holo. I was going somewhere better than that, but
that's not the greatest introduction. It lacks a certain pizzazz, if I may critique it.
Jacob. I am the chaos one. Jacob is the bow tie one. We write sci-fi and fantasy, and it's fun. And when we're not writing, we also play a lot of video games. And today we are here to talk about a bunch of those video games. And Dazzle, what are you doing? Okay, he's in his box. He's behaving. He's just making crinkly noises. The cat is in my room today. All right. Today, we are here to talk about some of our favorite video games of all time, which is Monolith Soft's Xeno series. And for some context, you guys, this involves Xenosaga, Xenogears, Xenoblade. Are there any other Xeno games that I'm leaving out? Are those the main ones? The main series? Those are the ones I know.
I think that covers all of it, at least all of that we want to discuss today.
Okay. And just for context, you guys, I was only vaguely aware of these games until I met Jacob. And the first I really paid attention to this was when Jacob said, we're buying a Wii just for this one game. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to complain about buying a new console. But I thought it was interesting that he wanted to buy it for one game specifically, and that one game was Xenoblade Chronicles. And it turned out that Xenoblade Chronicles was fun and huge enough to actually merit the purchase of the entire console, because how many hours did you have in that?
I would rather not say.
It's a colossal amount of hours.
It's a really big, really long game, and I have played through it multiple times. Not only the original, but also the re-release, the definitive edition, I think is what you call it. But yeah, I've sunk way too many hours into these and other games.
Well, look at it this way, Jacob. There are much worse things you could be sinking hours into. But the reason why I wanted to bring these up is because these are games that have had influences on various things that we've written. Whether they're direct influences or just vibe influences. And so we're just going to kind of go down the series and fangirl and fanboy about it. So first, I want to start with Xenoblade Chronicles. Now, Jacob, you're the one who introduced me to this game. So tell me, if possible, give us a short, basic rundown of what Xenoblade Chronicles is about.
Okay, you've got two gigantic beings, the Bionis and the Mechonis, and they fight each other, and they basically kill each other, kind of, sort of. And they're so colossal that life flourishes on top of them, including human life. And we fast forward an unspecified amount of time, and our protagonist is Shulk. His city is under attack by a force of mechanical beings called the Mechon that originate from Mechonis, and he's got to pick up his mentor's magic sword and go on a quest for. I think we should start by saying one thing. Spoilers.
Yes, there's some spoilers.
We can't talk about this stuff without spoilers.
We'll try to keep them low, but a lot of the awesomeness of these games is found in how insane they get. Because the premise of each game is fairly straightforward and fairly simple, but you reach a point where suddenly there are twists and reveals and all sorts of things galore. I mean, it's a JRPG series. I mean, there's going to be insanity of that nature. So yes, there will be spoilers. So you have been warned.
So he picks up his mentor's sword, which also allows him to see the future. and it's one of the few weapons that can cut through mechon armor. He basically goes out with his buddy Ryan to seek revenge, and it's in that regard, it's a little bit different than your typical hero's adventure. Going out to do good and save the day. At one point, he's like point blank asked, "Oh, this is about revenge." He's like, "Yes, it's about revenge. I want revenge."
But the thing about it, though, and one thing I really like about the game is that, like, it's a JRPG, and usually JRPGs have these really, really dark, angsty characters. And no, the characters in Xenoblade are kind of well adjusted. I mean, they have genuine, justifiable reasons for wanting to get revenge, but it doesn't absolutely consume them. In that dark, angsty way. "Oh, Mythical Mew is here, hello," and says, "I hear Xeno talk, and I had to join. Yes, you're among your people."
You are among friends.
Yes. So, Jacob, you're the one who introduced me to Xenoblade at first. What drew you to Xenoblade that made you say we had to spend money on this entire console to get it, compared to other games you could have bought?
Well, that's actually a fairly easy question to answer. It's made by basically the same people who made the Xenosaga series, which, for all its flaws, of which there are quite a few, I love that series. And I think that Xenoblade is one of their best stories. That team has told a lot of really great stories, and they've told some good stories too, that haven't quite risen to the same level. But they have a real strong knack for great world building, great stories, and great characters. And I loved the Xenosaga series so much, and Xenosaga Episode 3 is one of my favorite games of all time.
For context, you guys, so whenever Jacob and I were first dating, naturally we were showing each other our favorite entertainments. And as part of my flirting, I just sat there and watched him play the entirety of Xenosaga 3. And I'm pretty sure I fell asleep a few times, not because it was boring, but because it was long. But Xenoblade 3 was something I experienced while we were dating. And I think you've played through it. You still have a PS. We still keep our PS2 just so you can play Xenosaga 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The PlayStation 2 is still it's still hooked up to the television. There's a little bit of an adapter necessary
these days
to make it connect. But I am here with my my assistant.
Yes, Mystical Mew says, "I do see that Cosmos figurine. It's not the only one we own."
Yes, this is true. So that's basically the reason why I was really enthusiastic to get Xenoblade. It was also around the time where it was hard to acquire that game, and it was getting a lot of really good press. So
yeah, because the first run had a really small release, didn't it?
It had. I think there were some. There was something to do with the localization, that they originally weren't planning to like bring it over to like the States, I want to say, and there was like a petition or something. Honestly, I wasn't really paying a whole lot of attention to all that. But at a certain point, it's like, oh, the people who made Xenosaga, they came out with something new. Oh, it's got people living on two gargantuan robots. This sounds really cool.
I have to say that, and this, I guess this can transition into my next question, which is, what is it that makes Xenoblade one of your favorite games? And I have to say, for me, I have not finished the game. I've watched you play all of them multiple times. I'm in the midst of it right now, but it's an enormous game and I'm a slow game player. But I have to say, the thing that really catches my attention from about Xenoblade from the get-go is the wondrous sense of scale. And when it comes to entertainment, I am an absolute sucker for sense of wonder kind of stuff, and stuff that where scale is played with. And the idea of an entire story setting, like being set on the backs of like two Titan godlike figures, it's just, oh my, hell yeah, I'm absolutely for it. And you wander through the world, and you have settings like what the Bionis' elbow and things like that. And it's just, you've got all these really complex worlds existing on these dead but not really dead bodies, spoiler alert. and it's really, really cool on a very basic world building level. So what about it makes it your favorite, Jacob?
I mean, there are a lot of things that go into it, and some of it is what you described. But I'm a sucker for really good, really interesting villains, and we have Egil in Xenoblade, and Egil is one of my favorite villains of all time. He is dealing with grief in a very unhealthy way. In that most of his his race, most of it has been wiped out.
Mm-hmm.
And the being behind that is the Bionis. And the Bionis is sleeping. And he intends to kill the Bionis. Now, the way he's going about that is that he's basically engaging in genocide against the people living on the Bionis.
Yeah.
And so at one point, Shulk asks him, it's like, what do you have against us Homs, the humans of the setting? And he's like, I don't have anything against you. He's like, what are you talking about? You're trying to kill us. It's like, no, let me explain this to you. When the Bionis wakes up, it's going to be hungry, and it's going to suck all the life force out of everything that's living on it. You're just food for my enemy, and I am trying to starve my enemy. I don't really have anything against you guys, but you're kind of in the way of me killing my ultimate objective.
Yes. And
he's just a really cool villain. And it also, you have the moment where he and Shulk basically come to terms. They both, to a certain degree, there's a little bit of a mirror image there. It's a very hazy one because Shulk wants revenge and Egil wants revenge. Shulk is going about his revenge in a slightly healthier manner than Egil, but there are some parallels there. And they both, to a certain degree, they come to terms with their conflict and their grief, and they're willing to sit beside each other. And then, of course, you have one of the big wham moments, and it's things get really crazy really fast after, just like right after those two, have their kind of reconciliatory moment. So
he says only slightly. I see your other question, by the way, Mew. We're going to get to it when we talk about Xenosaga in a second.
Oh, we should just jump to that right now.
I want to finish talking about one, because one's the one I've played the most of.
Okay. All right.
So I want to talk about the characters and then the combat system, because for me, the characters are one of the things that absolutely, makes all of the Xenoblade games in particular, and really all of the Xeno games that I've seen you play. But the characters make for a cozy gameplay experience, despite the fact that the story gets very dark at points. Like Shulk and Fiora and Rein are very much characters that I enjoy hanging out with. And for that reason, Xenoblade is one of my it's one of my comfort games and one of my relaxation games. And I realized back when you were playing it a lot because it's an enormous game. And I realized that I actually have relaxation reactions, like Pavlovian reactions to some of the music in this game, especially the Gower Plain theme, I want to say.
I mean, it's the iconic
Xenoblade
track.
And it's absurd because I was going to listen to it today before this podcast just to make sure I had the right name. And it's like the moment it started, there was a visceral reaction in my brain, like a happy reaction to the Gower Plain theme. And there's also just the opening screen for Xenoblade Chronicles 1. It's very simple. Like it's just like a slow, I want to say sunrise or sunset or something, but you have this really gentle, slowly rising music in the background. And sometimes I will just turn on the game to have the opening screen on. It's like the equivalent of a cozy fireplace video playing in the background. But yeah, I love that. But did you have anything you wanted to add about the characters?
Oh man. Nothing in particular. I mean, they're a great cast of characters.
Their catchphrases are great too. They say them too much. But
well, I mean that's just sort of the nature of the combat system in the Xenoblade series is that they're just shouting out their combat moves and their one-liners all the time, and sometimes it gets a little bit much. To the point where where in Xenoblade 2 there were some somewhat notorious repetitions that actually got trimmed during an update because they were just a little bit too much. So they sort of like shortened or made them a little bit less prevalent in that game.
I have to say, I never get tired of hearing "It's Rhine time." At one point, I saw this print-on-demand clock that had Rhine's face in the center, and all the numbers were they just said Rhine or had his face. I still want that clock, but I don't think the artist sells it anymore.
The "Don't Forget Me" repetition and the lines that go with that. Some of the soldier enemies from 2. We
got Richie in the chat now. He says, "Look, it's one of my favorite writing duos." We love you too, Richie. Yes, and yes, Xenoblade Chronicles is a top tier series. Man, we're already 18 minutes in, so we should probably switch to Xenosaga so that we can actually fit all these things in.
Let's go.
But we can talk about the combat system later because they're kind of similar from Xenoblade game to Xenoblade game. So Xenosaga is the big one. Because it's the one that I heard most about from you before Xenoblade happens. And Xenosaga and Xenogears are also 2 of the games that influenced the Seraphim revival, right?
Well, Xenogears was one of the influences.
Oh, okay.
Xenosaga, I think, honestly, I'd have to look at when different things got released, but I think I at least started writing the Seraphim Revival series before the first Xenosaga game came out. I believe.
That's right, because you wrote it years before we released it, because you wrote it in college, and then we re-edited it once we married, and then re-released it. And by the way, Seraphim Revival is giant robots fighting hand-to-hand in space and lots of drama. If you care about it, I'm putting a link in the chat, so go read it. It's cool. But it's of
the things that we've released, it's the earliest thing that I wrote. But I still think it's fun, and it's a fun interesting adventure. It's got giant robots in it. So
you know how I am on giant robots. Like it's my favorite thing of your early stuff. But yeah, so I want to get to Mythical Muse question before I forget it. But thoughts on episode 3 and how it concluded the Xenosaga trilogy?
I have many thoughts about this. All right, so the original plan, as stated by the creators, was that they were going to Xenosaga was going to last 6 games, and that plan did not come to fruition. When they were, there's a lot of evidence of when they were working on Xenosaga Episode 3 that they were trying to wrap up as much of the story as they could and to include as many of the story threads as they could. And while Xenosaga 1 and 2, they're fairly slow burns in terms of story, Episode 3 is just a wild roller coaster ride. And the even though the pacing was not how many things are you going to post in the chat?
I'm catching up on my links.
Fine. Okay.
So right, everyone, just look in the comments, and there are things you can enter to win and pre-order.
Okay. I'm just seeing these things pop up, and I'm just like, what?
Just keep talking, Jacob.
So Xenosaga Episode 3, besides a few spots, is very fast-paced. And it also has a lot of payoff. So you have, things being set up, relationships being built, characters being established, the world being established, on and on and on. And then episode 3 is like payoff. And there's also, it even ties back to Xenogears, where there are callbacks to that game. While there's not direct tie-ins, there are allusions to characters and locations from Xenogears. So anyone who's played Xenogears and the first 2 episodes of Xenosaga, you get to Xenosaga Episode 3, and it's like, oh man, I've eaten, I've had my meal, I've eaten my greens, and now it's just dessert, just constant dessert. And a lot of the battles have like a lot of emotions tied up in them. You're facing very, very infrequently are you, like in terms of like a boss, you facing just like a monster. Most of the time it is some other character that your characters have a history with.
Oh yeah.
And there is a reason or multiple reasons why you are, about to throw down with this character. And so all those emotional beats and how the combat system ties into it. And it's also in terms of the connection between the combat system and the world building is superior in 3 than it is in 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. For example, the characters of Momo and Cosmos can both use the Hilbert effect, which is an ability you see them use in cutscenes in the first 2. But then it's like, oh, here's an ability and that they can use, and it has the effect that it has in the cutscenes. When you're going through the like there's things that you keep hearing about, the Miltian conflict, it keeps showing up, and then you're like right smack in the Miltian conflict, and like the enemies that you expect to find there, the URTVs, the UTIC organization, the Ormus shock troops. They're all there in this big, conflict that's ravaging this city, and the city's just, getting the situation in the city is just getting progressively worse, mm-hmm. As you're fighting back and forth through it, and so getting to the end of, obviously they didn't. Okay, before I get to the end. Like one of the places where you can really see the kind of cuts that they were making, trying to cram as much in, was with I think with Ziggy's story, in that you saw a lot of hints that they wanted to tell more about his history with the Galactic Police, his history with Voyager, his history with Kanan. And a bunch of that just sort of got dumped in text boxes that you can kind of find in this one building off to the side. It's like, yeah, this is, you're like looking at this, it's like, man, I bet these guys, this was like going to be, Ziggy's story was like going to be like one of the 6 games. Yeah, I could imagine that. And it's like, it's in a dungeon with some text boxes. So yeah, there were clearly cuts. There were clearly things that they trimmed in order to get to the end, but they got to the end, and I feel like they really told the ending that they wanted to tell. and it hits some really, really heavy emotional beats. I mean, like the scene near the end where Jin is fighting, and he's like fighting one of the elite Gnosis, and I mean, he gets like swords run through. He's run through. He like pulls the sword out. He's going at this thing, and it's brutal. Even in the edited U.S. release, where they don't show the blood, it's like, come on, guys. He's got like swords through his chest. There should be blood. And then you have like, Cosmos, and she's like protect, but they're both fighting to protect Chaos and Nephilim as they try to prevent the universe from doing something bad. I'm not entirely sure. Some sort of universal temporal spatial reset thing. I'm still not clear on that. But it was a bad thing, and they were trying to prevent it. And so like Cosmos, she's got like an arm blown off. She's like using her special ability, and it's great sacrificial stuff going on. And then you have, hey, it's we're Shion and some of the other cast are going to head out and try to find Lost Jerusalem, which is what they call Earth in the setting, which brings us back to Xenoblade, because if you're familiar with Future Redeemed, the DLC.
Is this the one where the Zohar shows up at the end?
No. Hold on.
Okay.
There's the Zohar in Xenoblade 2.
Okay.
They call it the conduit there, but it's clearly the Zohar.
Yes.
But no, we're talking about the DLC to Xenoblade 3.
Okay.
So that's Future Redeemed. And you got a scene there at the end, and the various, like the two Earths have been like remerged, and so Earth is the different like pocket universes that were created by Klaus's experiment in the backstory of Xenoblade 1. So those Earths get merged back into one, and then you see this little blue light. Okay. And I'm pretty sure the little blue light is what's left of Cosmos from the end of Xenosaga Episode 3.
I distinctly remember. Okay.
Hold on. I'm not done yet.
Just go.
I'm not done yet. Okay. So you have that, and you also have so there are signs in Xenoblade 2 that this was in Xenoblade 2 there was some soft retconning of Xenoblade 1. It's a little bit here and there around the edges, and part of it is like, hey, we only showed you like part of this scene, where Klaus is talking to Mayneth. I forget what her other name is, but anyway, the Mayneth character, and he has his basically his Zohar experiment that rips reality into two. So they say, hey, there was actually more to this scene, and it paints Klaus in a little bit different light, and there were a few other things as well. And so I was looking back at that. It's like, hey, I think that their long game was to tie the two series together. And so the end of Future Redeemed really lays that foundation. And you also have the name drop, the big name drop at the end of Future Redeemed. So you've got this scene where the characters, they're in this it's kind of like a virtual reality setting within Alvis's head, I guess, is where they're at. And they're seeing a Earth, essentially. And they see like one of the orbital elevators and whatnot. And so there's like this big emotional scene going on, but all the people who are like big fans of the Xenoseries, they're not like listening to these characters at all. They're all listening to the radio that's playing in the background and how it name drops Dmitry Yuriev. I mean, like, Dmitry Yuriev.
Yeah, I distinctly remember when you reached that scene, because I think I was in the middle of writing or doing something, and you got all excited and came into my room and interrupted my writing, and you were just like ebullient with
I was very excited.
I'm pretty sure we had like excited celebratory dinner that night.
When they name dropped Dmitry Yuriev, it's like, oh man, they're going to be tying the two series together. They're canonically joining them. And actually, one of the things that is
using the comments
it's more subtle, but in terms of the design language in Xenoblade, it's very, very much divorced from anything in the Xenosaga series.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get to Xenoblade 2, particularly with the world tree and like some of the enemies that you encounter there, and like the mechs there is like, these kind of look like eggs. What's like AGWS eggs from Xenosaga, and so you see that they're like, they were bringing in that element of the design. Of course, Cosmos and Telos, they show up as blades.
Yeah.
But most people, I think, they saw that, it's like, oh yeah, it's Monolith. They're just, they're just bringing in some of their other characters. Everyone
it's a
likes,
nice little Easter egg,
Cosmos. But yeah, and yes, the Vector logo that showed up in Future Redeemed, and it's like,
For those who are audio only, Mythical Mew is in the comments saying, I kind of went insane when I heard the name and saw the Vector logo.
Yeah.
Now is actually, when you bring up the blades, now is actually a good point to talk about Xenoblade 2. Xenoblade 2 is an interesting, unless you have more you want to say about Xenosaga. Because
there's always more, but we should probably move on.
Xenoblade 2 is an interesting one for me because there are certain elements that I like less than the first Xenoblade, but in some ways, I think the characters are more interesting. And I also really, really like the blade system and how complex the blades themselves become in the context of the world.
Well, it's certainly more lighthearted. And, Shulk is, as we discussed, he's out for revenge.
Mm-hmm.
The Mechon, they came to his town, they killed a bunch of people, including his girlfriend.
Yeah.
Who actually wasn't killed. She was taken, but
She gets a hot robot body. Or she gets a robot body. I guess
she does get a robot body. But yes. But anyway, whereas Rex.
Yes.
Sorry. Too many characters just all bouncing around in my head, including my own. So Rex, he been, instead of having, out for revenge, he is out to pay back a debt. Pyra saved his life. Pyra wants to go to the world tree to essentially, I think she intends to die. She wants to die, but anyway, Rex is out there to take her to the world tree and to repay that debt. And so it's a much less, it's
Using the comments saying that Xenoblade 2 was deliberately an inversion of Xenoblade 1, which I didn't know, actually, but that actually makes a lot of sense. And I kind of like viewing the two as inversions of each other. I do like them both. Like, both of them are very much two of my favorite games. But I lost track of my brain. You look like you're reading comments. I can't tell.
There's just been a lot that have been accumulating, so I've just been glancing at it, and while you talk, I was doing a little bit of reading.
Okay, yes, but I like the complexity of the characters in 2, and I like the coziness of 2. Like, my main memory of 2 actually is, I remember you were having a rough time at work and didn't feel like playing video games when you came home, but I was playing Xenoblade at the time, and you just asked me if I would play Xenoblade so you could watch while you fell asleep or something. It was like, I just remember
there was something like that going on, and I like fell asleep to you playing Xenoblade.
Xenoblade 2, like, I consider both games kind of cozy by my gameplay preferences, because I love to wander. I don't care about finishing stories. I just like to explore all the little weird nooks and crannies, and there are so many areas to explore in all of these games. And so I get on Xenoblade or Xenoblade 2, and I just kind of wander. And I like the story, but there's so many little things to do. I like helping everybody do their errands. I like going and hunting all the monsters. And one thing I really love about the open areas in these games too is that they're not experience level based, really. I mean, you have area. Well, what I mean to say is you have your standard monsters in certain areas, but then you can be in an area where you're just running around a bunch of level 5s, and then suddenly, oh, here's this level 80 just wandering around, and you can try to attack it. You can try your luck, but I like having those those big surprises in those levels, because it makes the world more interesting, and it makes it feel more dynamic and more what's the word I'm looking for? It feels more immersive and real because you have those level differences. And it also makes it a lot more explorable. Like, some games you play, once you reach a certain level, early game areas aren't that interesting. But in Xenoblade games, I can go just about everywhere, and the world is still interesting regardless of what level I'm at, because there's new stuff to explore, or monsters that you couldn't fight before, but you can fight now. And I really love that aspect of the games. You looked like you had something to say.
No. I do too. I mean, you're right. It's the kind of fusion of different levels of monsters within one area does encourage revisiting those areas, because there's parts of them that it's like, hey, yeah, I'm just not prepared to take on this level 80 monkey that's roaming the Gower plains. I will be back later when I have leveled, and when I'm in my party is in an end game state. Yep. and then we will try it again.
Who's your favorite character in the Xenoblade series?
I mean, I've already mentioned Egil.
Other than villains, because I know you got a thing for villains.
I do have a thing.
Can't name any more villains.
I mean, I do really like Shulk. And I do like the cast of Xenoblade better than Xenoblade 2 and Xenoblade 3. I guess Xenoblade 2 is, it's in terms of like just my personal preference for characters and stories that I like. They're a little bit too goofy. It's a little too slapstick at times. I mean, certainly Xenoblade 2 has its serious moments, but particularly with some of the the backstory with Pyra and how part of her mind is closed off, and you have the Mithra personality rising back up, and just when you go through the DLC and you get to see the details of the Aegis War and why she's in this repressed state. But the characters in of the Xenoblade games, the characters in Xenoblade 1 definitely resonated with me the most of the three. And I just I do like Melia. Melia is a cool character, and it's also you have those elements. Melia gets it rough in Xenoblade because most of her people are completely wiped out. Her brother is killed, and she also, on top of this, she's got something of a thing for Shulk, and it's not reciprocated. But her backstory as she's got that kind of half-breed mixed bloodline storyline to her where she's got she's got the wings on the head that aren't quite full length, Millia's got a lot of things going for her, and she comes across as sort of initially as the kind of sort of the I am better than thou princess type, but that's just a very glossing over the surface look. And as she opens up with the other characters, and as they have adventures together, she's a really cool character. So I guess I'd have to say Shulk and Melia are my two favorites from the Xenoblade series.
I have to say, I'm an absolute sucker for the Nopon characters. Like, normally I don't really like overly cutesy mascot characters which is an absurd thing to say considering how much I love Pokemon. But the Nopon are just, they're adorable. They have just enough of that cute verbal quirkiness about them, but there's complexity to them as well.
Okay, but which Nopon is your favorite?
Oh, Ricky comes to mind because he's my first Nopon, but there's also, I forget their names, but you have the brother and sister from is it Torna? Or it's one of the it's one of the expansions. And
yeah,
I may be mixing up their relationship.
The expansion to
is it Future Connected?
Yes, it's I think it's Future Connected. It's basically the epilogue to the first game that they added with the definitive edition.
And I haven't actually played that one yet, but every single time those two came on screen when you were playing it, I would come into the room because they're so cute together. Like I'm not normally all that interested in very childish characters in video games either. Like I have no maternal instinct whatsoever, but when those two come on screen, I'm like, I want them. I want to defend them. I will do crimes for these Nopon if they need me to. Yes, Kino and Nini. Nay. I can't remember how their names are pronounced. It's been a while since I've watched you play it, but I love them. I love them so much. But yeah, so we haven't talked about Xenosaga, no Xenogears yet. I get the early Xenos mixed up. So we're getting close to our hour. So let's talk about Xenogears. So now I have to preface this by saying I know nothing about Xenogears. This is all you, Jacob. Literally, the only thing I know about Xenogears is the opening that you showed me, and just because you knew I was a sucker for giant ships, because the opening cutscene is basically just massive.
Right. So you've got this like gargantuan spaceship, Okay, it's like a the Star Destroyer from the first Star Wars,
Yes.
flying by, but like times 10. Okay,
Yeah.
this thing's massive. It's like this, it's I don't know how big it is, but it's just gargantuan, and there's all sorts of mysterious stuff is going on. There's sort of like this these weird silver tentacles that are bursting from it and crashing back into it, and turrets are activating on it, and they're shooting ships that are trying to flee, and the captain basically sets the auto destruct, and then you like flash forward, and you're with Fei Fong Wong in this little village in the middle of nowhere, and it's like, how is any of this connected?
Yeah.
And it's so Xenogears is it's an unfinished game.
First of all, let's back up. Again, saying that I know nothing about Xenogears. What's the basic premise of Xenogears?
We'll be here all day. Oh geez, where do I even start? Okay, so you've got this oh my, this is hard. You have no idea how hard this is. Okay, so
boil it down to what's cool about it then.
Hold on. I'm trying. Let me try. Okay, so in the ship that you see in the beginning, there is essentially this there's the Zohar, and there is a kind of a like biomechanical weapon system called Deus, and Deus is essentially trying to put itself back together, and it has like various ways that it's trying to do that, and one of them is through an agent called Myung, who is trying to direct the course of human history on this planet to the point where human beings can be used as biological parts to rebuild essentially this sort of God figure in this kind of setting. And she there are certain points where humanity has kind of not evolved correctly, so she orchestrates genocides.
It seems to be a recurrent theme
in this so you also have the like original, so you have like Faye who's being reborn, and part of that is because he made contact with the wave existence, who's like this this like extra dimensional being that is sort of like it's like part of the Zohar, and so it's sort of like stuck there, I think, and that's sort of like where the power of the Zohar is coming through the wave existence, and so he's like made contact with it, and he like keeps getting reborn, and Ellie, his love interest also keeps getting reborn. But you have like one version of him who's Lacan. He like is severed from the wave existence, and then he decides that I forget exactly what his goal is, but Faye basically ends up like it's really
question. Is Xenogears More complicated or less complicated than Xenosaga?
It's more complicated.
And it's just one game. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
It's more complicated. And it's more convoluted too. And it's also the fact that it's not finished. That there are parts where, especially with the second disc, they were just like, you guys have gone way too far over budget. We're shoving this product out the door. And
but what about it makes you like it so much enough that it influenced the Seraphim Revival novels?
So you have all these different elements that are it's really weird, and it's really layered, and it all just kind of fits together in this weird, wonderful way. And it was inspiring to encounter a story of that complexity that resonated with me that strongly. And so I'd say that the feeling that story gave me, it's like, okay, Xenogears, gameplay wise, has more than a few rough edges. Okay. But and it's a long game, and you can't skip scenes. But I played through like the whole thing. I want to say like 3 or 4 times.
Oh, wow.
And this is like a 60, 70-hour game. And some parts of like the gameplay itself aren't really all that fun. It's just sort of like a slog. And some of the boss battles can be pretty darn brutal on top of that. But the story and the characters really resonated with me, and I wanted to re-experience that. And that was before YouTube was a thing, and I could just like rewatch certain cutscenes again. And so I played through the games. And it's also so I mentioned like the giant spaceship at the beginning. So you encounter pieces of this giant spaceship. So there is a structure that I think it's actually called like the Tower of Babel. And so it's this massive tower that you have to scale with your gears at one point. And that's the fuselage from the spaceship.
Nice.
At one point, you are going through this massive floating fortress that is this super powerful relic from a bygone age, and this fortress is just one turret from the original spaceship in the opening scene. It's just one of its guns is this massive floating fortress that is like this pinnacle stronghold of one of the factions. And so you have this sense of lost, unknowable wonders. Fort Jasper. Mythical View. I could tell you are you know some of this stuff better than I do. But you have I do really like the sense of the kind of the technology is so advanced, and it's the source really isn't known or understood, that it takes on kind of this mythological quality, even though the gears are just machines. They're these relics from a bygone era, and they're being unearthed, and the certain elements of them are just these black boxes, and the people, most of the people in the setting have no idea how they work. And there's just there's a lot of cool. There's a lot of cool to up to the world of Xenogears, to the characters, to the story. It is very unfinished. I mean, there are literally parts in the second disc where you just have characters sitting in chairs talking about the dungeon that you would like to play through. And you're just seeing like little snippets of it in the background. And it's like, I really would have liked to have like played through that dungeon and done that, guys. But now I'm just reading these text boxes. Oh, well.
Yeah. Well, man, we're coming up on our hour and we haven't even covered Xenoblade 3 or Xenoblade X yet. So we may just need to do another show.
I mean, I think we can go a little bit longer.
Okay.
We don't have to cut it off right at 1 hour.
Well, you told me before we started that it was exactly 1 hour, Jacob.
Well, that was when I sat down, but I took my pain medication, and my medication has been seeping into my system, so I've got a little bit of a second wind going, so we can go a little bit longer.
Yes. Oh, Mythical Muse says they actually referenced this in Hi-Fi Rush. Check it out sometime. I've been wanting to play that game just solely for the art style alone, and but I'm still behind on every game. Like I bought a Pokemon game like 2 years ago, and as much as I love that series, it's still in the plastic. But yeah, I need to play Hi-Fi Rush. So we've talked Xenogears. Do you have anything else to add about Xenogears? Or shall we move on to 3?
Yes, I have more stuff to add, but we should probably move on.
Okay. So, yes. All right. So,
they referenced the chair?
Mythical Muse says they referenced the chair. I don't know what the chair reference is, but
anyone who has played Xenogears has played it all the way through. They all know about the chair.
Okay.
And the pendant. The pendant swinging back and forth. Back and forth. As they sit in the chair, talking about stuff that you wish you were playing. but before we move on, so the final dungeon in Xenogears, Merkaba, it gets translated different ways in different games. It really stuck in my head, and so like when you have the Merkaba show up in Xenosaga, it's like really a big moment. So it has a very particular color palette, and then there's these a certain shade of red and a certain shade of like a bluish green, and it's very distinct. And so when you go into the Merkaba in Xenosaga Episode 3, I remember, it just being thrilled. It's like, oh my goodness, it's the Merkaba, and it's one of the points in the game that I think was hit worst in terms of gameplay by the necessity to get the product out the door. So in that particular dungeon level, whatever you want to call it, there's a lot of backtracking, and I mean an excessive, obscene amount of backtracking. And what I think the original intention was that you were actually going to split into 2 parties, and one would be on foot and one would be in your mechs, and you would be swapping between the 2. But I think that they didn't actually, obviously they didn't make that gameplay element. And so, in some ways it's my favorite dungeon, and in some ways it's my least favorite in episode 3. And it's also that you get to the end and it's one of the few places where it's like, okay, you have Sellers, who is this this villain who's been built up and whatnot, and it's like, okay, it's time to fight Sellers. You don't get to fight him. So I think that was a cut there. Whether I don't know what the intention might have been at some points, but I gotta believe that there was a boss fight planned there. And I think what was going on was that there was a gameplay element there to, swap between parties. And I think part of it was that how the mech system ended up, and that you had pilots and co-pilots, and so you basically had most of your party members in the ES units, the mechs. And so there were multiple things that kind of clashed with what they originally intended to do with that dungeon. Okay, I'm done.
Okay.
with that anyway.
All right, so Xenoblade X and Xenoblade 3 are kind of outliers to me because I'm actually kind of indifferent to those two. And like for me, like they were both, and again, they're games that I mostly watched you play as opposed to play myself. I don't think I've picked up either of them to play myself. And it's like their stories are good, their characters are interesting, but they never vibed with me in the same way that the others did. Which is weird because Xenoblade X had mechs in it, and like that's my thing. And so I'm curious.
And had one of your favorite composers too.
Oh yes, I will. You guys, I will listen to anything by Hiroyuki Sawano. He has this. I think it's Hiroyuki Sawano. I have to look it up. There's this particular sort of soaring sound that he'll use in his compositions. That if I hear it, just in anything, I will dart across the house to see what is playing. Like it's one of those things where there are certain sounds that automatically get my attention. There's the Pacific Rim theme, the G Gundam theme, and anything by Hiroyuki Sawano. Like it's my happy music. But oh yeah, I absolutely love the soundtrack to Xenoblade X. And but for whatever reason, I think some of it for me was just because I loved 1 so much that when X came out and it just wasn't 1, and the sci-fi of it I didn't find it as interesting as the fantasy element of Xenoblade 1. So
one of the things, okay, so Xenoblade X, the exploration element was great. And that was sort of, for me, the point, was to explore, and that playing through the main story was sort of secondary. So when I got to the actual story beats, my characters were severely over-leveled.
I remember that.
Where I'm like, I don't know, like level 30 or 40, and I'm like dealing with like level 8 enemies. One of the things that is really, really fantastic about the design of Xenoblade is with the design of the Mechon, even if you are over leveled, there are elements to how you fight them that has to be different. So they, even if there's a disparity between levels, and there you have to do things differently when you fight them, and that kind of establishes or reinforces in your mind that, hey, these guys are a serious threat. And you have that story gameplay connection that is stronger because of those mechanics. In Xenoblade X, the ganglion they're sort of forgettable. in terms of villains. The world itself is great. Just going around the environment, killing stuff, leveling up, exploring, finding cool stuff. That's all great. Even the wham moments in Xenoblade X's story, where it's like, oh wow, your character is actually a synthetic humanoid, and you're being controlled by your body that's stored in the life hold elsewhere. It's like, okay, well, that's cool and all, but
yeah, it's like, it's neat, but it doesn't compare to the reveals in other in the previous games.
And then you find out that at the end that everyone's body is you don't actually have bodies. They're just all sort of stored in essentially a computer in the life hold. But then, like, the computer is gone, and it's like, okay, well, how are we all still existing? And
yeah,
and those, in terms of storytelling, those are cool beats. But I feel like the feeling that I got from Xenoblade X is that the major some of the initial world building was done by their A team at Monolith, but in terms of the actual execution, it was their B team.
Makes sense.
So, which, a lot of developers, they have like an A team and a B team, and it's how they produce more regular content, which I certainly appreciate. I'd rather have Xenoblade X than nothing.
Yeah. If Xenoblade X was not a Xenoblade game, like if I had discovered it as a completely different series starter, or as another like franchise entirely, I probably would have played it and been like, oh, it's got mechs, this is cool. But because it's a Xenoblade game, I'm gonna compare it to all the other Xenoblade games, and so I guess we come to 3. And 3 is another interesting one, because I don't actually think I watched you play 3 all that much. Like, I saw the trailer for 3 and I was like, oh, it's a war. There are lots of video games about wars, and I haven't finished 1 and 2 yet, so I'm just gonna go play 1 and 2. but you actually played through 3, and there's some pretty cool stuff in 3. Now again, the main thing I remember about 3 is the music, and it's primarily because of the flute guy, and just the watching that particular musician play the flute is just one of the most fun things ever. I get so much joy whenever I watch him perform, and by connection, whenever I hear the battle music in Xenoblade 3. But that's the main association I have with it. So go on. What do you enjoy about Xenoblade 3?
I would say that, well, first of all, like all the normal fundamentals of a Xeno game, I enjoy. I enjoy the characters. I enjoy the world building. I enjoy the story. I would say that, a lot of those elements are. Xenoblade 3 didn't really, hit as hard. Hit the mark for me personally quite as closely as, say, Xenosaga Episode 3 or the original Xenoblade, even though I did enjoy it. It's certainly, it's got darkness, and it's got some depressing stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It's got,
would you say
child
it's the darkest?
soldiers being reincarnated in this perpetual war, and it's a little depressing at times.
I would say it's probably the darkest of the Xenoblade games. Would you say?
Well,
it's got its bright moments too, but and there's some dark elements in the others.
It's certainly I'd say some elements in terms of darkness. It's competing with the original Xenoblade in some of those elements. If we're talking just the blades and not, not
This
Gears.
Gears is the darkest.
Gears is dark.
Thanks for hanging out with us, by the way.
Gears has a lot. Gears is very dark. We've only just skimmed the surface of Gears, and yeah, let's not jump into that ocean at this moment.
We can do a whole other video about Gears specifically.
I would say that the combat system in Xenoblade 3 of the Blade games is my favorite. There's a lot of things that I really liked about it. I liked the the sort of job system that they had in it. I do really like there's like some small refinements to the gameplay that I really appreciate that makes it flow better. For example, in the original Xenoblade, like Shulk has light heal, so he has a healing ability, and so you select that ability, and then you have to select who you're going to use it on. In Xenoblade 3, most of the time it's just bam, area effect, or you're laying down some sort of field effect on the battlefield. And so instead of select and like when you're trying to heal, you need to do it fast. And so like that delay of selecting the ability, select the target, and it's like, oh darn, Melia was got aggro, and now she's dead. And I failed to heal her in time. You have moments like that, whereas it's a much cleaner process in Xenoblade 3. And so you have a number of kind of smoothing of the edges in the game system that makes it more fluid. And it just works. It clicks better for me. I would also say that the I think Xenoblade 2, the fights some of the fights just dragged for me because you had you're applying these elemental orbs to the enemy, and then you got to break the orbs in order to do this big attack, and it just there's a lot of setup, and then you got to go through this process to do the big damage. And while you do have a similar system in Xenoblade 3, it does it is a bit snappier. And though I would say like the chain attack system in 1 is the fastest.
Yeah, Mythical Mew is in the chat again saying the one downside in 3 is the chain attacks. Incredibly hype, but take far too long. I think 1 has the perfect balance. I have to say that when it comes to games, I'm mostly there for the RPG elements, and combat is just something I put up with. But I really, really enjoy the unique combat system of the Xenoblade games, because there's you can button spam, like you can play pretty straightforwardly, but when you learn how to use the arts properly and how to chain them together properly, it's really, really rewarding, because really, really cool stuff happens. And when I play games, I usually don't go through the effort of learning how to do the special attacks, which is honestly one of the reasons why I'm really struggling with Devil May Cry right now. But with Xenoblade, it has this perfect balance for me where it's easy to learn, and that makes it a lot more fun for me, because I'm not the kind of person who likes to analyze video games before I play them. I like to just pick up and play in my off time. And I find the Xenoblade combat just really, really great for players like me. And yeah.
Well, to a certain degree, Xenoblade 2, it's a so Xenoblade 1 was more about positioning. And yes, like from like what angle you're executing an attack, and also like in some cases, in what order you're executing the attacks. Whereas Xenoblade 2, it's a little bit of a rhythm game where you're like canceling attacks at a certain point in like the rhythm of your regular attacks, and when you cancel into an art, you gain an attack bonus. And so
I've never thought of it as a rhythm game before, but that makes sense.
You're welcome.
Nice. So of the games, is it 8 games in the series, because you've got the 3 Xenoblades, you've got Xenosaga, and then Gears, and then X. Which one is your favorite of all of them? It's a tough one, isn't it?
No, not really.
Or is it Xenosaga 3?
It's Xenosaga 3.
Other than Xenosaga 3, which one's your favorite?
The original Xenoblade.
I would have to say that for me too, because I really love 1 and I really love 2. And I love them in different ways, but 1 for me, it's just it has the advantage of being my first Xeno game in general, and it has the advantage of just being a really, really excellent game, especially for my preferred play style. It's just, it hits all the right notes. It's a beautiful game. Despite being initially a Wii game, it manages to be really pretty. It manages to do a lot with the graphics. Not with the graphics themselves, but with the world design, I should say, because you know there's a really detailed world there. I love the characters, I love the music, I love all the things.
Plus, you have the glow up that it received with the.
Oh yeah, it looks a lot better on the Switch. And did we? So we bought the Wii for Xenoblade 1. Yes. We bought the Wii U for Xenoblade X. Did we buy the Switch for for the definitive edition?
No, for Xenoblade 2.
Okay, yeah, so we still bought it for a Xenoblade game. But yeah, every single Nintendo system we own, we have specifically bought because a Xenoblade game was coming out. So it's a bummer that there's apparently not going to be a remaster of the Xenosaga series, though, because I know there were hopes up for that a while back. But
I don't know. I mean,
they did market testing or something at one point, and they said it didn't generate enough interest, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Monolith has been kind of quiet recently. At least I haven't, seen any news coming out of them, and I'm not sure what they're working on precisely. I mean, whether or not it's called, Xenoblade 4, there's, going to be something. I mean, the series is, continued to rise in popularity. And acclaim, and of course it's making them money. So there's they had that really big teaser at the end where it's like, hey, we're going to be combining these story elements, and so with that said, I think the potential of at least like a re-release of some sort may be in the works, but which I would certainly welcome, because then I could shelve my PS2 and play Xenosaga 3 on a more modern console.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I don't know what it is with the adapter, but whenever there's a lot happening on the screen, everything just gets a little bit blurry.
Yeah. Maybe it's a new adapter.
No. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going on there, but I just live with it.
Yeah. Oh. All right. Well, before we wrap up, I have a few little writing announcements, so stick with me for a moment. First off, I kind of forgot to announce this at the beginning, but we're running a contest where you can win pretty much any signed book from us from either of our pen names. So it's in the show notes, but I'm putting it in the comments now. If you want to try to win a book from us, just fill out that little form. We'll select a winner after the podcast, and then we'll contact the winner. Also, let's see. We got some books coming up. So, Jacob, do you want to talk about our upcoming books while I spam links in the chat? Or, because we've got Blood Knight 3 and we've got Freelancers coming out.
Oh, wow. Yeah. It's going to be a busy October.
It is. Oh my gosh, yes.
Okay, so Freelancers of Neptune. So it's a scrappy crew on a rundown ship having adventures in our solar system, except our solar system is a very different place than it is currently. It's been reworked with large-scale macro engineering, and it's kind of this age of rediscovery and wonder and adventure and danger. And the crew has gotten this lead on a treasure trove of lost technology. And there are some very, very bad people that also want this treasure trove as well. And so it's a really good, fun sci-fi adventure. Also, it features a ex-space pirate cat girl.
Yes. And we're doing a special promo, which if you look on the screen, you can see all pre-orders, as long as you fill out my form to get them, are going to receive these fancy shiny foil bookmarks with art from the cover and whatnot on them. We are also going to be giving away, hold on, let me get my screen adjusted here. So you see the bookmarks, they're cool, they're shiny, they're still coming in, and they're in the mail. They're supposed to arrive tomorrow, so I don't have them to show. But hardback pre-orders specifically are going to get some extra stuff. So one of the prizes is going to be this fancy little sticker, which is also very shiny. You can see there's foil doing cool stuff on it. So there's that. There's also going to be a secret bonus prize for hardback pre-orders. So in the chat, there are a number of ways you can get the book. There's, standard order through Amazon or wherever you enjoy buying books. But we've also teamed up with a local bookseller to do signed copies of Freelancers of Neptune. So if you want to order a signed copy specifically, go to the link in the chat and also in the show notes. And also, if you want to get the pre-order bonus swag, don't forget to fill out the form, which is also in the show notes and chat, because I'm the one coordinating this. And if I don't have your address, you're not getting your stuff. So make extra sure you fill out that form. But also, what else? So,
Blood Knight.
Blood Knight #3 is coming out, and that is on our Edie Skye shared pin name. So that link is in the chat, and I forgot to pull up the cover, but just it's sexy. And you want to describe that one, Jacob, while I find the cover? Well, it's book 3 in the Blood Knight series.
So yeah, our Blood Knight Clark, he and the lovely ladies of Broken Fang have won their second victory against the vampires who secretly rule the world. And they have so far remained anonymous, but certain eyes are being drawn to the city where they live, the city of Chester Creek, and a hunter, a deviant hunter from the Academy of Silence, has been dispatched to the area to find out why vampires are turning up dead. And this hunter is no joke.
Oh yeah,
he is no joke.
You can tell the stakes are raising. Now, if you want to read book 3 before it releases in October, it is almost finished posting on the Patreon, and so I'm putting the Patreon link in the chat. Also on Patreon, we just opened up chats. It's for subscribers only, but we also have a $1 tier, and I like to think that we're at least $1 worth of chat entertainment. So if you want to chat with us, the Patreon is there, and that's the best place to get a hold of us to chatter about things. Let's see what else. So there's more merch up in the shop now, which I'm about to share. So we have Titan Mage t-shirts, like this Harper's Harriers t-shirt that I'm wearing right now. So that's new. And then also we've got some appearances coming up. So next in September, starting September 20th, we are going to be guests of honor at PCon in North Texas, and I've put the website for that in the chat. Also, we don't have an official event set up for this yet, but on October 26th, which is a Saturday, we are going to be teaming up with David Weber and Jason Cordova at the Tangled Web comic shop in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And we're going to be doing just a big group signing there. And so I'll share more information about that once we have it. We're still working out some details, but if you want to come and hear us do readings and chatter about stuff and then hang out and get books signed afterward, it's going to be a really fun event. But again, that's October 26th. And I believe that is pretty much all of my little announcements. So, Jacob, do you want to chatter about what we've been watching or reading, or are you sleeping?
I just want to say that, at Tangled Web, obviously, David Weber, he generally does not, need any introduction. Of course, he's, a New York Times bestselling author, and he's a really, really cool guy to hang out with and listen to. He loves telling stories. And Jason Cordova is not only is he a really good friend of ours, but he's also a really good author. His star is rising.
Oh yeah,
he's been writing in Larry Correia's Monster Hunter setting, and he's also got stories of his own that he's telling, and
he's got one coming out in like a week. It's called Mountain of Fire.
Mountain of Fire?
Yeah, it's Mountain of Fire, and it's basically like Catholic schoolgirls kicking zombie butt. So, I mean, that's a lot of words together in one sentence. So you should absolutely go pre-order that too. It's from Baen, so it's on the Baen website, and it's probably in their I think their monthly bundle is still active, their monthly ebook bundle. So yeah. But yeah, the way the signing is going to be structured is we're going to do a reading and chat for an hour, the four of us together, and then we've got 2 hours afterward to do signings and hangouts. And the store is also going to give little discounts to people who buy our books. So I'm still working out some of the specific details with the store, which is why I don't have an event set up right now. I'm still working on the flyer and stuff, but just mark your calendars because that's coming and that's going to be awesome.
What's the date again?
October 26th. Saturday, October 26th. Actually, I'm paranoid now. I got to double check. I got to check my calendar and make sure I said the right thing because what even is time? Yes, October 26th. So, do we want to chat about what we've been writing and reading, or do you want to go eat food?
I think I'm starting to run out of gas.
Okay, well, we can talk about all that stuff next time. But we've had a good crowd tonight, so thank you guys for sitting and listening to us. If you have any other topics you would like to hear us talk about, leave them in the comments, and we will schedule another chatter at some point. We tried to do them once a month, depending upon what our schedules allow for between writing and life and everything.
We should probably try to schedule one where we talk about Helldivers and we bring our entire Helldiver gaming group of all authors
absolutely
together. It's like an entire 4-person team of authors diving and playing. And
I'm absolutely going to set one of those up. I've got another panel that I've got to schedule before that one where I asked a whole bunch of my space science friends if they wanted to do a space science panel, and I've still got to get that one scheduled. It's been like 2 weeks since I mentioned it. But Mythical Muse says, would love to discuss more Xenos sometime. We're easy to get in touch with, whether via our social media or email or stuff. So yeah, feel free, email, chatter. We love to chat about stuff.
Yep.
But yeah, so I think that's going to wrap it up tonight.
Yep.
So yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. I was about to say thank you for joining me like I do with my guests on my guests on the other version of this show, but you live with me, so I guess thank you anyway for joining me, husband.
You're welcome.
Yes. Anyway,